Travis Wayne Goodsell, back from my run. Still need to make and upload the email that I sent to Judge Campbell, accompanying the defense counsel lawyers for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, because I had to sue. So one thing that is not understood by Mormons is that you don't let the church get away with destroying your life. You hold them accountable. And the church runs Utah. They are in control of the government. So the second of the two lawsuits has to deal with the corruption of the federal court, siding with the defense, the church, on all things related to suing them. So, significantly, today is the 5th dark day of Hanukkah. Now, the dark day is what this video is about. I did one back in 2017 because on the 5th dark day of Hanukkah, on December 17th, 2017, was the sign of the dragon from Revelation 12. And so this is a memorial of that. And more significant this year, because this year's the Exodus. And there's some stories about this event. And the stories are not included in Mormon scripture, because Spencer W. Kimball took them out. First is Maccabees, obviously, from the Apocrypha, but another apocryphal book is called the Book of Judith. I've gone over the significance of Judith, because Judith is the name through which was supposed to be Yah, Prince of God. Anybody remember what that means? Or is pronounced in our English? Israel. Yeah, but who got named Israel instead? Being the birthright blessing son usurper, Jacob usurped Esau's blessing and birthright. And thus, because of that incident, God named him with the new name of Israel. For now, Jacob was to have the future Messiah to fulfill Jeremiah chapter 23. Save the Jews on earth, not this heavenly salvation. Jews already have a God. But also save the world and establish or restore the kingdom of David. Which, this is the shield of David, the sun symbol with the sun symbol around it. The double sun. And so Judith is the wife of the Philistines whom Esau married, as he had been usurped of his birthright and blessing. And so thus the writer had to give him a Philistine wife. But it's interesting that he named her Judith, because Judah is the descendant of Jews, of whom Jacob, through Leah, gave birth to. He wasn't the birthright blessing son, that was Reuben, but in the blessing to Judah, he became a lion's whelp. And so Judah and the lion became symbols of the Jews. And so the story in the Gospels about Jesus is betrayed by Judas, the Greek form of the Hebrew Judah, which is masculine for the feminine Judith. And the betrayal of Judah involves the birthright blessing son of the favored wife of Jacob, Rachel, named Joseph. So Joseph is betrayed by Judah. I wonder if anybody betrayed Joseph Smith, as Joseph Smith referred to him in two separate talks that were not included in the Doctrine and Covenants by this Judas, whom Joseph Smith called him, who usurped the church, of which needs to therefore also be restored, because it has strayed from what Joseph Smith was trying to set up. Interesting. I wonder. No, I don't. I'm being sarcastic. And so, yes, Judith plays a significant role. And as I've gone over with you, because all of you watch all of my videos and stick through to the end of all of my videos, don't you? I'm just so captivating, so interesting, so fascinating, that you just are compelled to listen to the end of every one of my videos. Judith is the name of the Messiah's mother. I've gone over that with you. It's in the birth date of the Mormon Moses video that I have on my homepage still. And so the book of Judith, which was not put into the Jewish text, neither was Maccabees for that matter, even though they celebrate the events of the Maccabean story. And Judith, I don't have the specific thing, and I'd have to click over to it to go over it with you, but should I summarize it? Yeah, I'll summarize it. She's a Jewish widow, but uses her influence to thus conquer. Holofernes is his name. He apparently was a bad guy. I have to read the text to go over it with you. But what she did was she fed him cheese. And that made him thirsty. And so she then gave him wine to drink. And as he's in a drunken stupor, she cuts off his head. Anybody remember anybody from the Book of Mormon who cuts off somebody's head? And not Shiz and Coriantumr. Though that can symbolically correspond as well. Nephi with Laban, the father of Leah and Rachel. But not the same. The Book of Mormon has a different character, but they name them the same as the biblical character. And so, yeah, Laban refuses to give the brass plates, doesn't want them sold, steals the gold and silver of Lehi, and Laban then says, "You are the thieves, I will kill you." And according to Deuteronomy 19:19, if you make a false accusation against somebody, the punishment with which you accuse, if they were actually guilty, is now the punishment that you are to receive for having made a false accusation. And thus, Nephi, as all Mormons know, don't you, therefore obeyed the law of Deuteronomy. They don't even bring that up. and smites off his head as fulfillment of Deuteronomy. And I know Mormons believe it's a true history, and so they say, oh, there's the cave of Lehi, and they were hiding there, and they had to flee because people were going to murder them. And made great for a movie, but is not based in reality. Because the Book of Mormon is coded. I'm just doing another connection here for a coded text. The Book of Judith from the Apocrypha, which Joseph Smith and his family, if you've been paying attention to my videos, the need for the family involvement, especially the patriarch, Lord Smith. Do you not understand how that works? You have lords and you have masters. The son is the master, the father is the lord of the house. And so go over Doctrine and Covenants section 3 and 10 with that in mind. And so the story of Judith becomes one of overcoming your enemies. It's understood in the story of Perseus with Medusa. If you remember Wrath of the Titans? There are two of them. I'm wondering if I'm getting the second one. Clash of the Titans. Clash of the Titans is the one I'm thinking of. Wrath of the Titans was a sequel of the reboot. And so that head cutting is also part of this original story, of which Judith is also a version of. There are lots of patterns in Scripture, and this is just yet another pattern of the prophecy. And it's interesting how they have Judith, who's a widow, who is the Savior, the Messiah figure in this story, rather than the son of Judith, who would be typically the hero figure, as Perseus is in Clash of the Titans. And also interesting is that this corresponds to an Egyptian story of Hathor, the house of Horus, the mother of Horus, Queen Horus. She is perceived in a story in which she, as a cow, thus cows give milk, which produces cheese. She gets drunk and goes on a killing rampage of mankind. And so there you have cheese and drunkenness with murder, killing, connected to Hathor and her story, similar to Judith. And so, yes, that's, since the Hathor story is the older version, it is obvious that Judith is a derivation of that story from Egyptian. And so the significance comes when we deal with day 5 of Hanukkah. Hanukkah, in short, Festival of Lights, and deals with the Jews, the Maccabees, who revolt against the Greeks. The Greeks had taken over the Jewish temple that they had rebuilt after Persia sent them back into Jerusalem after the Babylonian captivity. And they built their temple again, and the Greeks then take over the Persian Empire under Alexander the Great, and the Greeks take over the Jewish temple, and they offer pigs, which are a violation of the Mosaic law. And to commemorate the event of restoring the temple, comes the story of how they had enough oil for only one day to light the menorah in the temple. And so they did what they could, lit the candle, and the oil kept the light burning for 8 days. Now, if you've counted the number of candles on a menorah, as I hope I'm showing you in the beginning, is 9 candles. That 5th is not lit until the very end. It's the 9th candle, but it's the 5th in order. It's the 5th dark day. And so it's either used to light the others, or it's the last one lit as they skip over to number 6. Probably should do it right to, because that's Hebrew, is right to left. And notice that the pictures that I use are menorahs that were designed specifically with the Jewish star there at that center location. The candle in the middle is called the Shamash candle. Shamash means where are you? There it is. It means helper or servant. So slave. And what is interesting is the story of Samson. I've gone over that with you from Paleo Hebrew. The N at the end signifies him as king. And so it's King Samson. Shemesh is the Hebrew word that it originates from, which is the word for sun. Now it's Shemesh versus Shamash. Just the difference in vowels. That's it. That's all. And vowels were added with the Masoretes starting in 800 AD when they started working on their version of a single translation for the biblical text, combining the various texts together into one book, the Tanakh. And so the words are the same. Shemesh, Shamash. It's referring to the sun. That's why they put the Star of David, because that's the sun symbol. And so the restoring Messiah is the son of David, who was Solomon, which again, there's an N at the end, so it's the King of Salem, the King of Peace. Remember that title that Jesus is supposed to have, who's the descendant of David? He's the King of Peace, the King of Kings, Lord of Lords, the mighty God, the everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace. It's technically King, which means if they're using it as the title of Prince, it means that he has not yet come to become the King. So that's what Isaiah is referring to concerning the Messiah child. And we've already had the sign of the Son of Man, 23rd September 2017, right as the corrupt king was placed on the throne as that nation is being coup d'etat while we speak. Utah being a part of that coup. And so the significance of the fifth dark day I get from chabad.org. I'll just read it. The fifth day of Hanukkah can never occur on the Sabbath. Now, obviously, they use Hanukkah and Shabbat, but I'm not going. They mix English with the Hebrew. When Hanukkah occurs on days that are even only potentially Sabbath days, the light of Hanukkah combines with the light of Sabbath for a powerful illumination. So the fifth night, which can never be the Sabbath, that's the day of rest. Now, why would the day of rest not be the fifth night, which is Shemesh for the king, the Sun King, the future Messiah? It's because he has to battle for the restoration of the throne. And thus there is no rest for him. Represents great darkness. Thus, back in 2017, that was the sign of the dragon, of whom the last days Messiah does battle with, relative to other nights. Thus, the fifth light of Hanukkah has the unique task and power to illuminate and instill spiritually, even in such a time of darkness. Now, the fifth light is actually the sixth candle. So 6 points. Is that right? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Yeah. 6 points on the Star of David. So you see how they're symbolizing all of this for the last days Messiah of the Jewish understanding. Or shall we say the learning of the Jews? Anybody familiar with their Book of Mormon? 1 Nephi chapter 1 verse 2. We are not Christian Mormons. Okay. It is the duty of every Jew, wherever he may find himself, be it in Warsaw, England, or the United States, or Canada, to illuminate even the heaviest darkness. Now, why is it upon the Jews to illuminate the heaviest darkness when it's a symbol of the last days Messiah Christ? This has to do with the Mormon Christian Egyptian hybrid of the sacrament, which comes from the Egyptians. In the Egyptian story, Osiris is the good king. He is murdered by his brother, Set, with the N at the end, becomes King Set, with the murder of his brother. Satan, and the adversary in Hebrew. And Isis, the wife of Osiris, sends out her missionaries, servants, to gather the body of Osiris back. And the first time had to do with Osiris in a coffin landing on the shore of Babel, which is Beirut, Lebanon. And at its location grew a cedar of Lebanon. And so the Isis servants recovered the coffin with the body of Osiris, took it back to Egypt. The king of Babel, yes, of Tower of Babel fame, not Babylon of Ur, which did not exist, then turned the tree, carved it into what's called the Dej pillar, which became the symbol of Osiris. Dej is the name for thought. Dej and thought being phonetically the same, and thus David in Hebrew. So the 18th dynasty is the kingdom of the David Moseses, Tawut Moshe. And in Ezekiel talks about how an eagle in the parable in chapter 17, because 16 talks about Sodom being destroyed because of being filthy rich and neglecting the poor. Oh, you thought it was homosexuality? And so in 17 is the parable. An eagle goes to Babel, takes of the top of the cedar of Lebanon, which refers to the Dej pillar that the king had carved, and takes a branch from the top branches, a twig in another location he calls it, and carries it to a distant place, a land of merchants. And I've gone over this in the video about the birth of the Mormon Moses, giving the date and the time and the name of his mother and his name, etc., etc. Sun god, Amen, Emmanuel. El is God, and thus leaves Amen, sun god. Because Amen is the Egyptian sun god, which is the same as Samson, king, sun king. And so this is that part of it. The sacrament part comes where the first time that Isis recovers that body of Osiris in the coffin, she restores his life, giving him the breath of life, and then Set finds out that he's back and he's alive, can't have him taking back his throne, so he chops him up into 14 pieces. Other texts say 42 for the 42 districts of Egypt, but 14. And the obvious connection is the 12 tribes of Israel. What? 14, 12, what? There are 13 boys. Remember, Joseph has the double portion as the birthright blessing son. Ephraim, the firstborn, the birthright, he usurps it like Jacob did, and Manasseh. So 13 tribes, because Joseph is a double portion. And so yes, when you go to Ezekiel 37, it talks about the joining of the stick of Judah and the stick of Joseph of Ephraim combined into one book, and then goes on to talk about King David in the future, the one who restores the throne of King David. Not a coincidence. And so Isis then has to send out her slaves, missionaries, to the 4 quarters of the earth, because Set tossed the 14 body parts into the Nile River, and it got scattered throughout the world through the oceans. And you're saying, wait, no, 13 is not 14 either, Travis. It's because when the servants brought back the body parts of Osiris to Egypt, Isis assembled the body together, but there was one piece missing, and it's the difference between a man and a woman. Yes, it's the color pink and blue. And so she had to either fashion another one, or she spiritually hovered over the body of Osiris as a bird and immaculately conceived. It depends on which text you're reading from. And so she gets impregnated with Horus, the heir to the throne, the son of God, literally, because the Egyptians were gods. And so Set finds out, Satan, the adversary, finds out, and of course, this will never do. He has to kill Horus. And so Isis finds out that he's coming to kill them, and so she flees into the wilderness, Revelation 12, and escapes. And in the wilderness gives birth to Horus, and he grows up. She teaches him the religion of Egypt through the temple rituals of Osiris and his death, burial, resurrection, and ascension. And then Thoth, David, teaches him all about government and how to do battle to take back the throne. And so Osiris, when he becomes of age, goes back to Egypt to take back the throne on the 23rd of September 2017, with the 21st of August 2017 being the first day of the 3 days of darkness, which was Thomas S. Monson's birthday, of which he then died on January 2nd, 2018, which was the stars falling from the tail of the dragon sign in Revelation, and also corresponded with a lunar eclipse, a blood blue wolf super lunar eclipse. That was a massive one. That was awesome. And also, the 21st of August 2017 was the Egyptian New Year. Their calendar system is such that the New Year is never on the same day. And so for the Egyptians to have a New Year set up so that a total solar eclipse would occur on 2017, when the sign of the Son of Man occurs, when a president is put on the throne of America by a foreign enemy. Remember, 1 Nephi, chapter 1. The Egyptians knew. They knew astronomy. They knew the date. This is where the Bible signs in the heavens got their dates from, got their signs in the heavens from, the Egyptians. And it's all about the last days Messiah, the Christ, the Sun King, Samson, the son of Judith, Yah, Prince of God, Solomon, the King of Peace, the Prince of Peace, as a baby. So all of this ties in together symbolically. Now, if you're saying, well, wait a minute, how does the body parts being broken and then gathered to Egypt have to do with the sacrament of the broken bread and the gathering of Mormons to church to internalize the broken bread, of which is to come the Mormon last days Moses, Messiah, Christ? Yeah, that's exactly why. He is to be born as a mortal man. That's the learning of the Jews. And thus I gave you the indicator that his mother is to be named Judith, and she was to betray him, just as Judah, just as Judith, just as Judith and Esau's wife, as she was represented as a Philistine woman, which is, you're not supposed to mix religion. And so, yes, she would be of the apostate church, of which the original founder, Joseph, was assassinated and his organization usurped by a Jacob. Not called Jacob, given the nickname of Judas. In 1838, or 9, sorry, and 1840, on those two occasions, which were not put into the Doctrine and Covenants of this usurper. And I wonder why. And so, okay. Rabbi Schneur Zalman of Liadi, I butchered that. He was released from his second imprisonment on the 5th day of Hanukkah in 5561. Our current Jewish year is 3,333 years from the time that the Jews claim the Exodus occurred of Moses. And isn't it interesting that we too are now experiencing a coronavirus, 3 days of darkness, and a lawsuit in the court of Pharaoh. And so that's the significance of the 5th dark day of Hanukkah. Also significant is that Jupiter is now overlapping, according to the distance that we are away from the two planets, Jupiter and Saturn. They're starting to merge together now on this day. And I can show you the picture and the video of the 21st when they will be together. And so I'll put that in the beginning for you as well. Jupiter, if you've not been paying attention, is that symbol in the heavens, for the signs of the heavens, of the Jewish Mormon Messiah, Christ of the latter days. And so we'll see if we can finally get an Exodus and deliver us